What's up everyone, this is Zach. Welcome to the Last Llama Gaming channel. Today, I have the final build for Elessa. This build is going to be focused around dealing as much poison damage as possible. So I'm going to walk you through the gear, how to bless them, the skills and passives, as well as the god skill tree. And then I'll show you some gameplay, and then you should have an understanding of this build and its playstyle. So this is my attack and defense values over here on the right. All the gameplay you're going to be seeing is on Chaos 3. So let's get into the gear. Okay guys, so starting off with the armor, you're going to want to equip the Eternal Queen set, not to be confused with the Eternity set. They probably should have picked different terms than Eternal and Eternity for two different sets, but it is what it is. This is what it looks like, pretty cool armor set. So this set bonus gives you poison skills, deal more damage, and it also gives you a toxic aura that damages enemies in your surrounding area. Also, Spinning Blades skill is improved and no longer requires skill points to equip. So the poison skills are going to do 100% more damage, and the Spinning Blade skill is a pretty good move, so pretty good armor bonus. Getting into the daggers, of course I'm using the executors. They're just too good to switch out. I've tried switching them out for the dashing daggers for this set to get a extra aura going, so you would have the poison aura and then you would have these spinning daggers around you, but your damage just drops so much when you unequip the executors that you just have to go with this to get the best builds. For your bow, you're going to want to use the Master Archer bow. Performing a critical hit has a chance to reduce any current cooldowns. The reason we're choosing this bow is because we're going to want to have as high of a cooldown as we can for our Queen's Wrath, because we're going to want to spam that as much as possible. So this build does have a decent amount of focus on critical hit chance, so we can lower our cooldowns. The amulet I'm using is the Amber Talisman. Hitting an enemy has a chance to reduce the current cooldown and grant energy. Once again, working on reducing our cooldowns. And then your rings, I would recommend the Ring of the Guardian. Performing a critical hit has a chance to reduce any current cooldowns, as well as the Untamed Ring. Performing a critical hit has a chance to grant a damage bonus for a few seconds. So as you can see, we're stacking cooldown reduction on our bow, our amulet, and our rings, and most of it's focused around critical hit chance. So when we look at the blessings on our gear, we're going to want to include some critical hit chance on our offensive pieces. So what I did was, for my left side, I did these same blessings on all of my left side, including my two rings, and then on the right side I did more defensive focused blessings. So on the offensive pieces, we have 0.6 critical hit chance, 20% critical damage, and 44 damage. And I have that on 6 pieces. On the defensive pieces, I have 450 armor and 364 maximum health. This is the best defensive setup you can get. That's the most armor you can get on a piece. And then the maximum health is just the unlinked gem that you have to put in. Alright guys, so with the gear out of the way, I'm going to show you real fast how to bless your armor for the offensive stats and for the defensive stats. Okay guys, so this is going to be how you bless for offensive stats. This left side is going to give you crit damage. This top right side is going to give you crit damage. And this bottom right side is going to give you critical hit chance. And then this single orange gem is going to give you damage, flat damage. And this is how you get the defensive bonuses. This left side is going to give you armor. This right side is going to give you armor. And this one single jewel is going to give you health. Alright, so up next we're going to go over these skills and passives. So starting with the skills, we're going to have Sureflight Arrow Superior. This is your poison damage auto attack. So this is my favorite out of all of the variations of the auto. You can choose whichever one you want for poison, just make sure you pick a poison one. I think this is the best. Next up, Elven Shot Superior. Once again, picking it because it has poison. Next up we have Queen's Wrath Mastered. This takes up a whopping 18 skill points, but it is well worth it. It's going to give us a ton of poison damage when we cast it, as well as a lot of health regeneration to boost all our damage from the executors. And this is what we're working toward having up at all times. That way, as soon as it wears down, we can cast it again. Then we have the Spinning Blades Heroic. Launch a poison projectile that passes through enemies and rebounds off walls. Now this thing does a ton of damage if it focuses on an enemy. Now it goes through right enemies, but if you can get one in a corner or in a hallway where it bounces and hits them multiple times, this does a lot of damage. And since bosses are so big, it actually hits bosses multiple times before it passes through them. So this is a good damaging ability for this build, and it only has a cooldown of 3 seconds, so it's up almost constantly. Then we have the reflex shot superior. This is just good if you're surrounded. You got a lot of enemies around you. This is probably your best bet to do a lot of damage in a short amount of time, because this is going to hit so many enemies surrounding you. So this is just a great skill all around. It's not your highest damaging skill, but it does do a lot. And then we have Call of the Spirits superior. Summon a dryad that attacks and poisons enemies. Obviously we're choosing this one because it is a poison dryad. And I think for Elessa, having at least one summon is almost necessary. That way, at least some of the enemy's attentions are focused on it, and you can have space and sit in the back and do damage. If you don't have a summon, you're kind of going to always be surrounded, and you're going to be doing less damage because of that. Alright, getting into the passives, we have Master of Poisons. We're going to equip the Master version. Poison damage is increased and has a chance to slow enemies. So we're choosing this one over the superior version because your toxic aura, any enemy that gets close to you is going to have a chance to be slowed, which is just going to help you get away or help them do less damage to you. So this is a no-brainer. Next, we're going to use Tactical Retreat superior. Tactical roll grants a movement speed bonus of 30%, and the roll also leaves a trail of poison in its wake. So since this is a poison themed build, this isn't really a necessary passive. It just goes with the theme, but it is cool. It matches the aesthetic. It leaves a poison trail when you roll, and that poison does do damage, so it is worthwhile. But if you don't care, you can swap it out for the standard version or just unequip it and put your skill points to use in other areas. Then we have Blessing of the Forest Mastered, granting us the health regeneration. Standard on every build that you're going to use the executors on. It just boosts your damage by a ton, as well as it gives you some more defense through health regeneration. Then we have the Lone Hunter superior. Health and regeneration is increased if no enemy is nearby. So also standard when you're using the executors. Enemies pretty much have to be touching you for this passive to deactivate, so this should be up most of the time. Now this is something that you could equip the mastered version of, because it gives you 10% critical hit chance, which is amazing. But what you could do is put this as its standard version and then make this its master version, and that would probably make this build better. That's a personal decision, whichever you prefer, if you prefer the aesthetic or if you just prefer the extra crit chance. Getting down into our free passives, I have the Blessed Talisman equipped, critical hit chance plus 5%, no brainer. We need as much crit chance as we can get on this build. Then I have Master Blacksmiths, all damage dealt is increased by 10%. Now if you're not to that rank yet, because that is a fairly high rank, I think that's 18 in the Collector's Guild, I would recommend equipping Master Alchemist. If you're farming for gear, equip the Lucky Charm. And then the runners up would probably be the maximum health or movement speed. So getting into our stats, I have about 30% crit chance on this set, 406% critical damage, so when I do hit crits I'm going to be doing a lot. And I'm not going to go too in depth on this because yours are going to vary depending on what rolls you get on your gear. But the stats you need to prioritize are cost reduction first and foremost, so you can have Queen's Wrath up all the time. Health regeneration is also good, as well as flat damage, critical hit chance, and critical damage. Maximum health and armor are nice as well. Finally, getting into the God skill tree. Go all the way up to this top node to get the maximum amount of health regeneration. Once again, this is standard for the executors. You get the most amount of health regeneration by following this path. It is also where you get Queen's Wrath mastered and Blessing of the Forest mastered. And then to get your crit damage, you just go up this left side, follow this exact path that I took. Make sure you stop by and get this one node for crit damage. And then I place my last point right down here on the 2% damage. So if you follow this path, these are the exact stats you're going to get. You're going to get a decent amount of crit damage, flat damage, 5% health regeneration, as well as some other nice bonuses. Alright guys, so getting into gameplay, as you can see I have this toxic aura around me, and I can just stand here and it's going to damage all the enemies in the surrounding area. Sometimes it crits and it can do over 100,000 damage. And then of course I have my Dryad, my poison summon right here. You have your spinning blades. These are really good. They will hit every enemy that they pass through, and they can even ricochet. Up next is the reflex shot. As you can see, it actually hits fairly hard when it crits. So with this build, there's a lot going on the screen. This is a fairly active build. You're actually gonna be controlling your character a lot more than you did in my other builds. In my other builds, you kind of just stood back and cast traps and let your summons do most of the work. So this is a build that is probably funner for some people to play that actually like to be more active instead of passive. So if you're one of those people, check this build out and let me know what you think. Now you can cast your Queen's Wrath. It does a ton of damage and will likely kill a lot of enemies that were around you at the time. And then it's just going to boost your damage by a ton, and you can just spam your abilities until it is back up. And as you can see, it's back up already. As soon as it ran out, I had it back up. Which is why we are working on crit chance and just the overall cooldown reductions on our armored gear. And then it's back up again. So this is a good time to use reflex shot. As you can see, I'm surrounded and you can just spam it and it clears out a ton of enemies. Or your spinning blades. This is just a fun build. Alright guys, so that is the gameplay. It is a pretty fun build. It's much more active than my other builds I have posted. So that's going to come down to your personal preference and your playstyle. I think I still like my summoner build better. But this is still a fun build, a nice change of pace, and there's a place for all the builds because everyone's different. One last thing to note, this build does not perform nearly as well against bosses as it does against normal enemies like in relic hunts or expeditions. So I will show you a boss fight against the Lord of Change, but it does not perform as well as my other builds. So keep that in mind. I recommend using this when you're playing relic hunt or expeditions, just to switch things up, and it's fun to play different play styles. But when you're going into fight a boss, if you're in it for time efficiency and how quickly you can do it, use one of my other builds, because this one, at least the way I have it set up, does not do as well as those. So yeah guys, leave in the comments what you think about this build, if you enjoyed it, and tell me what your favorite build is for Elessa. Is it a poison one, a trap one, or a summoner one? My favorite is the summoner one, so let me know what you guys think. This will be the final build for Elessa, and I will probably be moving on to other games, but I will continue to regularly update you guys on when new content and new updates drop for Warhammer. So I'd like to thank everyone for watching. I'll see you in the next video.